This reading is going to be essentially an Akashic Records reading, just like the ones we do one-on-one, and it's going to be geared towards the subscribers of the Substack. We're going to see what needs to come up for you right now and what needs to be healed and how we can heal what's going on in the collective and in each of your individual lives. Let's get started and see what Spirit brings through. The first thing that's coming up right now is I'm hearing the phrase with a spirit of boldness. And Spirit's showing me you might be asked to go to cities or walk into rooms. This can be in your everyday life and talk to people or show up to things that you wouldn't normally show up to. I'm hearing the phrase a stranger in the city. And I'm seeing someone like almost feeling like ill prepared. There's not negative energy with it at all, but the ill prepared feels like, oh my gosh, I'm being asked to walk into this room or go do this. And I haven't been able to think about it. I haven't been able to prepare for it. I haven't packed my suitcase. I don't have notes. I haven't prepared what to say. Almost like, oh, someone asked me to get up on stage and teach about this, or someone told me about this interview that's happening in 10 minutes, or I'm supposed to go join this new group of parents at my kid's school and present my thoughts on something. I just found out about this 5 minutes ago. It's that kind of energy where you're going to be given this. The more that you are able to dive into these situations with boldness, Spirit's going to give you a potency. We don't have time to think, or there's no more time to overthink. There's just needs to be like this, almost like this willingness of, yes, I'm being guided by Spirit, and yes, I'm being guided by my magnetic monopole. If you don't know about the magnetic monopole, if you're a subscriber to Substack and you've read it, then you probably know what it is, or if you've received a human design reading from me. But your magnetic monopole, really quickly, is essentially the magnetic monopole is essentially what gives us life in our human design. It is located in the center of our human design charts, and it is the driver of our body. It knows exactly where we're meant to go in this life. It is attracting everything to us that we are meant to come into contact with in this life. So essentially, we have this magnetic monopole, and it is going to be pulling us towards the right people, the right situations. It kind of feels like when you play Mario Kart or a game like that, where it's like if you stop and think about everything, you're going to crash your car. There's really no negative energy with this at all that I'm picking up on, but it's just kind of that thing like we really need to be in our instincts and in our potency, and that's when we're going to see our magic come out. That's when we're going to see, that's how we're going to be able to show up in the right places and help the right people. First of all, this is meant to help us bypass fear, because right now we're going through a time where it's almost like the old timeline is ending. Like it is, we've reached a dead end. I believe that was part of the last channeled message that we posted. We are reaching that dead end. And so there's this sense of, we always talk about, oh, there's a rebirth. We hear a lot about rebirth, but it really feels like between 2024 and 2025, we're really jumping into a new way of being, and we're meant to it feels like there's going to be a giant shift for us, and we have to shift into this boldness. There's really no time anymore to rest on our laurels or rest in our comfort zone. And this isn't meant to remotely be it's so interesting, because when I keep saying like, oh, this isn't negative or it's not meant to be scary, I mean that sincerely. Like, I'm not trying to reassure you from the mind, because this whole reading isn't truly about we're meant to be in our instinct right now, and that is going to naturally happen for all of us. And I'm hearing Spirit say, when you get into these new situations, I will tell you what to say. I will put the words in your mouth. I will tell you where to go. So there's this reassurance of like, this isn't all on you. You're not alone. I will tell you where to go. And there's this sense of like surrender and trust as we move into this new timeline. you are being supported. Not only are you being supported, but this is already laid out for you. The time is now. That phrase was coming through so much in the last channeled reading as well. What that phrase is bringing to mind is everything in your life that has happened in the past has gotten you to this moment. Like, we're here. This has been planned the whole time. And now we're at the door. Now we're at the forefront. It's finally here, is the feeling. There's this really huge focus right now about being in the present moment and not being able to plan things out. Now, I am someone as a Virgo rising who loves to have as much prepared and taken care of as I possibly can in every situation. The sense is when you are in the present moments, the moments that are coming up are very much like being thrown into situations or dynamics or needing to think on your feet. Some of those moments you'll be like, oh, okay, I do need to go check in on this to make sure that this can happen. For instance, say you're not sure if you're going to move houses. You kind of know it's a possibility, but then you're thrown into a situation where you're like, oh my gosh, this actually is happening way faster than I anticipated. I think this may happen, so I'm going to make an appointment with a loan officer and find out. The preparation is, yeah, I'm going to talk to a loan officer right now, but it feels more like impending, like, oh shoot, like I'm actually going to make this move or need to make this move quickly. It's not like been thinking about this for 4 months, like should I, shouldn't I? It's like now it's here, now it's here, now it's here. So there's like a little bit of preparation, but the preparation also feels kind of in the moment for what is impending. And it doesn't have to be things that are as big as buying a house. Some of the things might be really big, but it also feels very much in the day-to-day of being willing to jump into things and jump into new ideas when they're presented to you, even when you're alone. Like, yes, I'm going to take care of this. Yes, I wasn't planning on this today, but I'm jumping into this, even if I don't know how to do it. I'm starting this. I'm not going to overthink it. Being willing to be interrupted and just go with the flow, go into meeting new people, go into new rooms. And there's also like spirits like bringing up this like, well, this is just going to happen naturally. You may start realizing that the old way of moving through the world has to take a back seat. It has to be put behind you. And that can seem really obvious, but it's like your mind and your identity and your nervous system hasn't caught up yet to the actions that you're taking. So it's like there can be all these actions that you're taking and you're like, okay, I don't know. It's almost like the energy feels like being a droid from Star Wars, where you're like, my feelings, my emotions, my nervous system hasn't caught up to what I'm doing. I'm just kind of doing what's coded within me. It's working, but at some point the emotions will catch up. And that's when there has to be this willingness to admit and say, yes, I am moving into a new timeline. I'm stepping into a new identity. I'm leaving past patterns behind me. But it feels like almost outrunning, kind of getting ahead of the overthinking or the emotions that would have stopped you or had you reconsider, moving on an instinct by instinct basis. There's no longer time for that. So it's almost like you're being pushed to outrun those things. And when we talk about emotions catching up in the future, there can be this moment of like, oh, I'm hearing like, holy shit, like, who am I now? Or where am I now? What have I just done? And it's, again, not in a negative way, but it's kind of like the ego identity has not had a chance to integrate into the new actions being taken. So as we all know, the ego tries to keep us in our comfort zone and it tries to keep us safe. That's its job while we're in a human body so that we don't die. When we're outrunning the ego, when we are truly living in a surrendered state from our magnetic monopole, it feels like we're going to be forced into situations like that. Not forced, not in a scary way, but just put into situations I just keep hearing like a stranger in the city. Kind of feels like being a stranger to yourself too, because you're like, oh, wow, I'm doing this. I'm doing this. I'm not overthinking it. I'm doing this. It feels really good. But it has that droid feeling where you're like, I'm not letting my emotions into this right now, or I'm not thinking about this ahead of time. And then it comes up later. And it's like the ego needs time to integrate into like, what is my new identity now? Who am I now? Because it doesn't have the past patterns to go off of. It's like you're behaving in a new way. Or you're hanging out with people that you wouldn't have in the past. You're doing things, not for any reason, but they're just so new. Maybe you're dressing in a new way, changing the way you look, moving, meeting new people, doing completely new things. It feels like stepping out of your comfort zone, like boom, 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 one after another, in a way where you don't have time to think about it. Your ego doesn't have time to catch up. Spirit is saying you are on the precipice of great change. And there's this sense of needing to enter into it, even if you have fear, into like what you're going to go do. They're saying like do it afraid if you have to, but the more you can be in the moment and just almost like act really quickly in the moment, where it's like you don't have time to overthink or get anxious, you just have to go. That's going to truly be the key. There's also a sense of looking back at your past and realizing that's where the rebirth theme comes in. When people talk about near-death experiences, they always see their life playing before their eyes. That almost feels like it's happening, where you may close your eyes before you go to sleep at night, or have these memories that can almost feel like another person lived them. You're like, oh, was that me? How was that 20 years ago? It can feel almost like you're watching a character in a movie, or it feels somehow detached from you, where you're like, oh gosh. You can have a lot of empathy for that person you used to be, and a lot of love, but it's like almost like you're going to be feeling like you are living a whole new life. It feels like this has been building for 5 years, almost like you knew it was coming and you're like, oh my God, when is it going to get here? But it's like we're actually here. And it's almost like when we were preparing for the whole new life, the rebirth that has been coming up so much in the past couple years, it's like almost like that was the womb time. It was like we were being warned, but now it feels very impending. Like this is happening now. What you've waited for is happening now. And when we look at our past, it's like, oh, I see how that person was being prepared. I see how all the things that brought me joy and what I like, it's almost like you can see your soul and be like, oh, who I am now and who I am turning into is who I was meant to be the whole time. But I was just holding on to so much conditioning. You can see yourself playing the roles that people around you wanted you to play, and you were fulfilling those roles and negating your soul. But all of that played a magnificent purpose into giving you the talents, gifts, experience, and wisdom that you have now. The time is now. So the song that keeps coming up, so it's the Talking Heads song, This Is the Place. I'm going to read you the lyrics, or some of the lyrics. The lyrics are, home is where I want to be. Pick me up and turn me round. I feel numb, born with a weak heart. I guess I must be having fun. The less we say about it, the better. Make it up as we go along. Feet on the ground, head in the sky. It's okay, I know nothing's wrong. Hey yo, I got plenty of time. Hey yo, you got light in your eyes. And you're standing here beside me. I love the passing of time. Never for money, always for love. Cover us and say goodnight. Say goodnight. Home is where I want to be, but I guess I'm already there. I come home and she lifted up her wings. I guess this must be the place. I can't tell one from the other. Did I find you, or did you find me? There was a time before we were born. If someone asked, this is where I'll be, where I'll be. Hey yo, we drift in and out. Hey yo, sing into my mouth. Out of all those kinds of people, you've got a face with a view. I'm just an animal looking for a home and share the same space for a minute or two. And you love me till my heart stops. Love me till I'm dead. Eyes that light up. Eyes look through you. Cover up the blank spots. Hit me on the head. And what Spirit was saying when these lyrics were coming through, I have songs that come through as messages all the time, is like the first two stanzas of the lyrics of the song feel like they're very much from the past of like living or walking through life on earth, and your soul feels very uncomfortable here. It's trying to have fun. It's trying to join in. It's trying to follow along. But then on the third stanza, the middle part of the song, it's like we're entering into a space of meeting the people that you were supposed to meet, of coming to the place that you were supposed to be, the whole purpose of your incarnation, what was planned before you were born. It's the part where you said, I've got plenty of time. You've got light in your eyes, and you're standing here beside me. I love the passing of time. We're acknowledging how much time, how much life we've lived, but now we're here. Now we're at a rebirth. And Spirit is saying, the people that, like, as you're entering into this rebirth, feels like so small and overused and cliche of a word to even use. It's like new timeline is so overused. I don't know what to use for this because it truly is your new life. It truly is. It's like a whole new way of being. And it was set out for you before you were born. Like, it's faded and it's here now. It's like the people that have always been meant to be with you, like the right people, like the really, 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 like the people who match up with your soul, who are aligned for you, that aren't just karmic patterns from your family playing out over and over again. Those people are here now. That can be your divine counterpart. A lot of people's great loves and divine counterparts, soulmates, business partners, even new family are coming in now or very, very soon. It's impending. It's here. It's coming. What Spirit was saying with this song is, oh, I'm finally home. Not only just with these people that, quote unquote, they're new people, but they're not new because they've always been home. You recognize them immediately. And it's not from a sense of familiarity, from some subconscious pattern that's linked to the way your parents treated you. It's like home from a place of wholeness, acceptance, and love. The thing about this love, whatever kind it is that it's going to challenge you. It's going to be a love that requires your new being, your new identity, your new self to step up. That's what's going to be required. So it's essentially going to feel healing and peaceful, but it may also, I don't want to say give you anxiety because it's not the type of anxiety that people mistake for butterflies with the wrong person. It's the type of thing where you're like, oh my gosh, like, how do I do this? Can I do this? It's requiring the highest version of you and the most healed version of you. Even if you're not healed yet, that's okay. Who really is? But it's requiring you to step into your new self. And with that, in anything, whether it's a new job, moving to a new place, anything that requires you to step into a new higher identity, who you always came here to be, that's going to give you a little bit of nervousness. It's like when your emotions catch up to you, your ego is still trying to figure out like what the new normal is, like how to keep you safe. And so that in general can bring up some fear, but it's all good. Spirit's also showing me this, it's almost like a 5-year-old girl's plastic bracelet, and it's like pink hearts, kind of the color of Polly Pocket, pink hearts with white beads in between. They're showing me this little bracelet, and it feels like a promise, almost like if you were a 5-year-old girl and you haven't been told by kids at school or your parents, you haven't received this imprint from society or from conditioning from those around you. We can always feel the observations of others change how we think and how we behave. But this little girl in this illustration with the bracelet hasn't really experienced that yet. She's picking things out to wear to her first day of kindergarten or preschool. that she genuinely likes, that feel like they're an echo of her soul. This little pink bracelet is a symbol of vulnerability, of coming back to who you were as a child. It's coming back to all the things that you loved when you came here, that you were meant to pull towards you, that you were meant to love. And so it's like, even though you're stepping into a new identity, the new identity is really just who you were when you were 5. And now you have all the wisdom. You have conquered so many karmic cycles. And now you're ready to put that little pink bracelet on again, come back home to yourself, and complete the mission you came here to do in the first place. I asked Spirit, will the old karmic patterns affect us as we move into this new way of being, this rebirth, this timeline change? The answer was yes. We still will be experiencing old karmic patterns. However, because we are changing internally, the way those old karmic patterns affect us will be different. And the way we respond to them will be different. It will completely change our timeline and our future as we move forward. And it will change those patterns. It will start to neutralize them, Spirit is saying. And I've used this metaphor many times before because it's what Spirit has shown me. Think of karmic patterns that may start with our ancestors generations back, and we see them in our own life every 9 to 18 years. It's like a giant rock being dropped in the middle of like a peaceful pond, and the rock is symbolizing karma, which is cause and effect. So we drop the rock in the middle of the lake and see the ripples and the waves moving out in a circular fashion. We can look at those karmic patterns as every 9 years, like the little waves. We can look at them as generations. We can look at them just, as patterns that keep coming up in our life. But when we change, we're able to handle those waves in a different way. Spirit's showing me an example of being at the beach, and there's a child playing in the waves. The child would turn their back on the waves, like the child wasn't completely aware. And the wave would knock him over, and the salt water would go up his nose. He would be coughing, crying, all of that. But now he has come into his own authority. He's come into his sovereignty. He faces the ocean. He knows what the ocean is. And every time one of the waves comes in, he jumps over it and laughs, or he gets ahead of the wave and then body surfs to the shore. He's handling the waves in a completely new way, and it feels like a new life, and it's completely different from how he remembers the past. It's almost like that past life experience of getting pummeled by the waves was necessary so that we could have confidence and learn how to handle the waves. And now the waves are fun, and it's something that we enjoy and we don't give a lot of fear or anxiety or thought to anymore. And so Spirit's saying the reason why we are kind of being forced into these situations where we have to leave our mind behind, in a sense, our logic, our ego, kind of like the overthinking, like we're being put into this place as what they call a stranger in the city. And it kind of feels like being a stranger to yourself. So Spirit is saying the reason why we're being put into these situations is because we are moving out of the cross of planning and into the cross of the sleeping phoenix. The cross of the sleeping phoenix is an incarnation cross in human design. It is ushering in a new time of human evolution starting in the year 2027. The cross of planning was all about working together in a community as a collective of people to create education, government, institutions, to build a society. It's based on duty and monarchy and looking outside yourself for what you should do. It's tribal, depending on the tribe. I would love to go into this deeply, but that's not what's coming through in the reading right now. The cross of the sleeping phoenix is essentially looking within to find your answers. You will no longer have the luxury of looking to outside authorities, whether that be pastors, gurus, experts, government officials, doctors. Essentially, when you go into the Cross of the Sleeping Phoenix, it's like all our old institutions will be crumbling. Maybe not overnight, but it will happen. It's a cross of the individual and following your authenticity. It is so important for us to be able to listen to our inner discernment, to know our inner voice, to know the difference of our inner voice from the voice of anxiety and fear, and also to know what our individual strategy and authority is in our design. Survival is truly the way that we will survive, not only survive, but thrive. And it's the only way we will have abundance in this new time of human evolution. Right now, we're being prepared for that, and we're being put in situations where we are forced to rely on our inner voice and in a moment by moment basis. And we're being forced to develop faith in ourselves so that we're able to do that, and so we can start to trust ourselves and come out of our mind. And that is how we are going to be led into our new life. When we ask Spirit, why do we have a mind? Of course, the mind holds value, but it's not meant to be the driver of our lives. What Spirit says to that, they're giving me this example of we receive the truth and we receive the authority. They're calling it like the authority or like the voice, the instructions of what to do. We receive that in our body. For me, it feels like it's coming through the solar plexus chakra, but not the solar plexus in human design. I know that's confusing, but we're going to say it feels like it is coming through where the magnetic monopole is in human design. And so it's like we receive the instructions there and the instinct, and we're meant to go ahead and act on that. However, our mind then is what as we act on those things and we're like, oh, we can trust ourselves. This is our truth. This is what truth is. This is what wisdom is. This is what knowledge is. We learn that as we follow our magnetic monopole, as we follow our inner voice and our authority. The mind is meant to create the stories that we give to humanity and that give us comfort. And the reason why they're calling it stories is it's almost like stories. Who said this? This is so important. I think I actually heard Greta Gerwig in an interview, and she was quoting someone else. She was saying myth is truer than true. When someone's just giving you a fact, there's no potency. It just feels like information. You're like, okay, that's a fact, but it doesn't necessarily mean anything to you. It's not embodied knowledge, meaning you haven't lived the wisdom of this information or this fact that you've been given. It's not embodied. It's not wisdom. But myth is essentially someone who has lived out the truth, has created a story, like a myth, that encompasses the truth of that fact, meaning like the emotions you felt, what happened in the situation. And it's almost like when we talk about myth, it may not be portrayed as completely literal or logical, but we're creating a story that gives depth and meaning and emotion so that another person who maybe hasn't experienced that yet can learn from our wisdom that we've already experienced. And so Spirit is saying the mind is for processing the truth in it so that we are able to share it and pass it down, because stories are like sustenance and support that we have passed down for generations. Stories are like the truth and the life of humanity, the Spirit is saying. So sometimes in these readings, we're going to be having these readings every month, these messages. Sometimes Spirit, I'm also, well, I'll bring this up in a minute. Sometimes we'll be going over astrology, sometimes doing in-depth meditations and clearings. This time around, Spirit is leading me to do a card reading and to pull some cards and to do some breathing. So we're going to be doing that. And one of the things that Spirit's also leading me to do, which is a surprise to me, I was not planning on this, but essentially we're going to do an intention candle for moving into this new timeline and life. Spirit is saying actually on November 1st, the Day of the Dead. I was expecting we do it in September, but Spirit is saying that we need to wait till after the eclipses And it also feels like that there's something about that being symbolic of our rebirth, the Day of the Dead. It feels like we're going to have some more readings before that happens. It's almost like preparing our intentions. The next reading that we post, and I might post this a lot sooner, is essentially like having a workshop of the identity and like who we're bringing into this new life. And then we can all bring forward our intentions for November 1st. I'll give you the information on how to do that, essentially via email or via commenting on this Substack. But I'll also send out another email about that. I will save your intentions and do a candle for you, and I'll also post it here on Substack as well. All right, so let's get to this card pull, and we'll talk more about November 1st later on. We had so many cards jump out. We're going to dive right into this reading because it's speaking to me. The first card that came out was Fated Meeting. This card has a picture of two people in front of a clock tower, and the clock has struck 12, kind of evoking that Cinderella feeling. It's like they're both encompassed in an aura of light, and there's this feeling of, oh, now it's time. Now we were supposed to meet. And it was always supposed to happen since the beginning of time, it feels like. And there's this remembering, but it's inside the body. It's like, oh, now I remember. Like, now it starts. Now it's time. It's like the clock tower is dinging. It is time now. Next to that, we had Paths Unknown come out. This is talking about stepping into the unknown. We have one way that's well lit. It feels like we already know what to expect. We have a path that's dappled with light. You kind of know what to expect, but there's another path that is dark. There's a fox standing in front of the dark path and a squirrel in front of the lit path. The squirrel represents self-preservation. The well-lit path is the path of self-preservation because the ego is trying to stay safe. The dappled path is the raccoon. It's like the raccoon is a symbol for mischievousness or being a crook. It's kind of letting you know this is the safer path, but is it really? There might be a lot of unexpected issues that come up on that path. Then we have the path that's not well lit. And sometimes the fox is viewed as a trickster, but foxes always feel like Cancer energy to me. Female foxes are known for being great mothers who take care of their young. They have to be stealthy, strategic, and make their way through the shadows to survive. And their instincts are very keen. The fox is standing next to a bag full of scrolls, reminding me of the King of Scrolls and the Hilarion card. Spirit was linking this with the King of Scrolls, saying the path that is unknown is what you're meant to go down, where you really have to like rely on your fox-like keen instincts and intuition. Yeah, and then we even have like an owl. I didn't even see that, an owl flying out. So yeah, on that path, that's the path that we were meant to go down, that we're fated to go down. But the mind is not going to want us to go down that path, so we're going to have to follow our intuition. And we have Archangel Raphael. This is a sign of healing. By you going down this path, you are healing past generations and your past self because you are choosing yourself instead of the way the mind has created for you or told you is safe. The mind's told you that the lit path is safe based on past conditioning, logic, the rules of society, or what's made you safe in the past, but that's not going to keep you safe in the future. There's essentially healing needed so that you're able to have faith in yourself and faith in your inner voice. And it's also saying that you're not going to be alone. Remember, at the beginning of the reading, we had what came through was like, I will tell you where to go. I will tell you the words to say. There's this feeling of like, you don't have to carry this burden on your shoulders. This time was already prepared before you were born, and you have a great multitude supporting you. It feels like we could say in heaven, but just in the unseen realm, you have angels protecting you, and that is true. So we have summertime and we have winter, but winter is upside down and summer is right side up. And that's talking about us going into a time of life and abundance. But we have to go down this darker path to get there. With the willow tree here, I love this card. The willow tree is all about being flexible, and the willow tree can grow on land and it can grow on water. It's also a tree that in storms, it can bend and be very, very flexible. So there's a sense with this card of adaptation and being able to adapt to all kinds of new environments. And that is definitely what we are being asked to do in this time. We have the Buddha prepares. We have been preparing for this for a long time. We might still be in a time of preparation, but the time is immediately approaching where we will be called to essentially be a stranger in the city, is what Spirit is calling us, is calling that. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you're moving to a new city as a stranger, but it just means the way you approach life, the way you lived your life, the way you spoke to people, the way you did your work every day, the things you thought about, the emotions you had, they're a thing of the past. You are approaching everything in a new way, and you've been preparing for this. Now is the time. So it can feel like being a stranger all over again, even a stranger to yourself, but you're really going back to that little girl with the pink bracelet or the little boy. It doesn't really matter, obviously, the gender. So you're going back to who you were as a child. So let's go back to the scrolls. We have diversity, we have Hilarion, and we have the King of Scrolls. Spirit is saying that these scrolls are almost like the scrolls of the Akashic Records or the scrolls of fate. Everything has been mapped out and set out by you and their guides before you were born. And these are like the scrolls that are giving you the words to say and leading you towards the right opportunities and the people to meet. And so your energy is going to speak volumes. You're going to be having wisdom come out of your mouth. You are going to be preaching messages. You are going to be given things to say to people that will be like a little key in locking their heart and their energy and unlocking opportunities and doors for you to step through. This is so true. Spirit is saying over and over again. Diversity is saying almost like there's an element of surprise here. You think you're going to be talking about one thing, or you think you're going to be doing one thing, or you think you're going to be with these types of people. But guess what? You're being led to so many different groups of people and so many different types of people and reaching people that you never could have really imagined that you would reach. But it's because we are giving you the wisdom that is coming out of your mouth. We are giving you the messages to speak. We are leading your steps. We are moving you in the right direction. All you have to do is surrender and really, really be in touch with your inner voice. The moment you start feeling pressure or anxiety to do that, that's the mind. That's not your naturalness. So just be in your naturalness and this will begin to happen. So with the King of Scrolls, what came up when we were clarifying who this King of Scrolls is, we have the War of the Roses, Caught in the Ruins, and the Muse. The War of the Roses can feel, sometimes this is about your mind and your intuition and your instinct kind of battling each other out, and being caught in the ruins is being caught in a karmic cycle. Sometimes the War of the Roses is literally you being in a war against people, like a metaphorical war, or against a situation that feels like a war. The Muse here is what is leading you out of that. That's the old life you were in. Now the King of Scrolls is looking at his scroll, his Akashic Records, where he's meant to go, and he's following his Muse. He's being led out of that. He's being led into community and into these fated meetings. With community here, this is like abundance. It's being around the right people and the right opportunities, and the fated meeting with the divine counterpart or soulmate. So with the Master Artisan and the Buddha Prepares, it's showing us that we are prepared. We have all the experience and wisdom we need to step into this time that is coming. With reflection, it is talking about, it's like, this is so interesting. This is us reflecting on our past and almost like saying like, oh my gosh, we've been preparing for this the whole time. We have our ancestors behind us, our angels and ancestors supporting us. So also with the reflection card, it's like the sailboat is almost getting to land. You can see the lights, like it's almost there. And the moon is almost full in this card. It's coming out from behind the clouds. It does feel like with the Buddha prepares, the master artisan, and the reflection card, it feels like we're almost there. Like the rebirth is upon us. It's like immediate, but it may not happen today, but it's basically happening. It's like the child's head is crowning. The contractions are getting really intense. You can feel it. The time is upon us, and it's like we're almost there. So that is the message Spirit is bringing us with the cards. I'd like you to get somewhere comfortable. Close your eyes for a moment. You can be in a chair. Put your arms out in front of you, palms to the ceiling. Take a really deep breath and hold it for 4 counts. And let it out your mouth. And one more time, hold it for 4 counts. And say, I surrender all. I surrender all. I am ready for what I signed up for. I am ready to move into my life with boldness. I am ready to receive my crown. I am ready to speak words of life. Thank you. Amen. And so it is. The next reading we have, which will be coming soon, we will be diving in deeper to our new identities and then also just seeing what else comes up. We will also be preparing for our November 1st Day of the Dead, which we'll talk about a little bit more as it comes.